We are constantly bombarded with a deeply modern, deeply exhausting piece of advice. You can be absolutely anything you want to be. It sounds liberating, but it is actually a psychological trap. By believing we can be anything, we often end up imitating the success of others, borrowing ambitions that were never ours to begin with, and fighting battles on terrain where we have no natural advantage. We climb ladders only to realize they are leaning against the wrong walls. This modern paradox of infinite choice breeds chronic burnout, imposter syndrome, and profound mediocrity. But what if the ultimate key to professional dominance is not limitless, sprawling ambition, but rather radical, unapologetic self-restriction? What if true power comes from refusing to play someone else's game? Today, we are going to look to ancient Indian statecraft and philosophy to find a ruthless, highly pragmatic blueprint for career mastery, one that completely subverts how we think about ambition today. To decode this, we turn to two foundational pillars of ancient Indian thought. The first is Kautilya's Arthashastra, the legendary treatise on statecraft, economics, and military strategy, composed roughly over 2 millennia ago. The second is the Bhagavad Gita, specifically the philosophical principle of Swadharma, outlined in verses 3.35 and 18.47. In the Gita, the text suggests a profound psychological truth. Better is one's own dharma, though imperfectly performed, than the dharma of another well performed. Better to die in one's own dharma, it warns, for the path of another is fraught with fear and danger. But this is not just abstract spiritual advice. When we cross-reference this with Kautilya's Arthashastra, we see this exact same principle applied as ruthless political and military strategy. Kautilya insists that a king's strength and the strength of his administration comes entirely from deploying people according to their innate nature and trained capability. The internal fire of inherent talent must be precisely matched to the external terrain of opportunity. To put the wrong man in the wrong environment is not just inefficient. In the ancient world, it was a fatal vulnerability. Let us decode what this actually means for you. The ancient Sanskrit word Swadharma is often lazily translated simply as duty, which makes it sound like a burdensome obligation. But a more accurate modern translation would be intrinsic operational alignment. Swa means own, and dharma in this context refers to one's essential nature or organizing principle. Your swadharma is the unique intersection of your natural cognitive wiring, your temperament, and your acquired skills. Conversely, paradharma is the path of another. It is the borrowed ambition. It is the career you chose because it looked impressive on a LinkedIn profile, or because your parents demanded it, or because society deemed it prestigious. Kautilya's Arthashastra takes this psychological concept and gives it teeth through the logic of terrain. Kautilya famously wrote that a dog on land can kill a crocodile, but in the water, the crocodile will easily kill the dog. Your nature does not change, but your power fluctuates wildly depending on the terrain you choose to operate in. When you pursue paradharma, you are the dog willingly swimming into the river to fight the crocodile. You strip yourself of your natural leverage. The ancient teaching is clear. Operating outside your authentic nature is not a noble sacrifice. It is a strategic error of the highest order. We can see this principle perfectly embodied in the historical legend of Chanakya himself, the brilliant strategist who authored the Arthashastra and engineered the rise of the Mauryan Empire. Chanakya possessed unmatched intellect, visionary foresight, and a ruthless understanding of power dynamics. He toppled the corrupt Nanda dynasty and built one of the largest empires in the ancient world. Yet, when the throne was empty, Chanakya did not place the crown upon his own head. He understood his own Swadharma with absolute ice-cold clarity. He was a Brahmin, a strategist, a kingmaker, and a kingmaker, but he was not a king.
He knew that the daily administration, the martial leadership, and the public diplomacy required to sit on the throne was not his natural terrain. Instead, he found Chandragupta Maurya, a man whose Swadharma was precisely that of a warrior and a ruler. By refusing the ultimate prize of the throne, Chanakya avoided the trap of Paradharma. He stayed in the shadows, operating as the prime minister and chief strategist, wielding ultimate influence without the friction of acting against his own nature. He conquered an empire precisely because he knew exactly which job he should not take. To fully grasp the utility of this ancient wisdom today, we must introduce the modern frameworks of career strategy and comparative advantage, alongside the popular Japanese concept of Ikigai. In classical economics, David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage states that an entity should produce only what it can produce at a lower opportunity cost than others, even if it is technically capable of producing everything. In modern career strategy, this is often called finding your edge or your zone of genius. Furthermore, the modern interpretation of Ikigai maps out a powerful Venn diagram, the intersection of what you love, what you are uniquely good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. Modern organizational psychology tells us that professionals who operate at this intersection do not just experience higher job satisfaction, they exhibit disproportionate productivity and resilience against market volatility. They are not expending energy trying to force a square peg into a round hole. The modern consensus is clear. Strategic specialization based on intrinsic strengths completely outperforms generalized brute force effort. Now we map the ancient onto the modern. Here is where the Arthashastra and the Gita perfectly bridge with comparative advantage and Ikigai, and where they reveal something modern career advice completely misses. Modern frameworks often over-romanticize the idea of finding your passion. They frame career alignment as a quest for personal happiness. But the ancient Indian texts frame Swadharma as a matter of survival, leverage, and power. Kautilya does not care if the dog is passionate about fighting on land. He cares that the dog will survive and win on land. When we synthesize these ideas, we realize that finding your Ikigai or your Swadharma is not a self-indulgent luxury. It is a ruthless strategic necessity. The ancient wisdom adds a layer of stark realism to modern career strategy. When you operate in Paradharma, when you imitate the tech billionaire, the charismatic influencer, or the aggressive investment banker because you covet their rewards, even though you lack their natural wiring, you are violating your comparative advantage. The ancient texts and modern economics agree, imitation is the most expensive strategy you can deploy. By embracing Swadharma, you stop competing on crowded, foreign terrain, and you force the market to deal with you on your own terms, in the specific arena where you are the crocodile in the water. Why does this synthesis actually work in practice? We can explain this through the psychological mechanism of cognitive load and flow state. When you are operating in Paradharma, living a borrowed ambition, you are constantly engaged in what psychologists call surface acting. You have to consciously monitor your behavior, suppress your natural instincts, and force yourself to care about metrics that don't intrinsically motivate you. This requires massive amounts of executive function. It drains your cognitive battery just to maintain the persona. But when you align with your Swadharma, you achieve what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi defined as flow state. Because the work aligns with your intrinsic cognitive wiring, the friction of execution drops to near zero. You process information faster, you recognize patterns intuitively, and you sustain deep focus without ego depletion. The ancient Indians recognized this thousands of years ago. Work performed in accordance with one's own nature feels effortless even when it is highly demanding. This cognitive ease is not just a pleasant feeling, it translates directly into a massive compounding competitive advantage over those who are merely faking it. Let us look at a vivid, concrete case of this dynamic in the modern professional world. Consider the classic trajectory of a brilliant software engineer. Their Swadharma, their intrinsic nature, is deep solitary problem-solving, system design, and building complex architecture. Because they are exceptional at this, the modern corporate hierarchy rewards them the only way it knows, by promoting them to management. Suddenly, they are a director of engineering. Their days are filled with conflict resolution, budget meetings, and political maneuvering. They have been pushed into Paradharma. They are now the dog swimming in the river. They become stressed, ineffective, and miserable despite the higher salary and prestige. They borrowed society's definition of upward mobility and lost their edge. The most successful tech companies have realized this flaw and created parallel tracks, allowing a brilliant coder to become a staff engineer or distinguished engineer, gaining the prestige and the pay of a vice president, but remaining entirely in the terrain of their Swadharma. They win, and the company wins because they refused to abandon the specific